Hey YouTube, Mad Max. So, see the wildfire smoke? That's that fire that's out of Northern California. The smoke's all the way up here. So, Thursday I had a conversation with a friend from work, and I was talking about how, I don't know, it started out he was tailgating another truck a little bit and made the other driver mad, and I started having a conversation with him because he's a young guy. And the next oldest person in the company is like 10 years older than him. So, he's a smart driver, but he's got things to learn. And I was talking to him about how quickly things can change. You can just be driving down the road minding your business, and then, one little thing changes and it gets crazy. So, Friday, I got off work about 2 o'clock, was working out of town. I start driving back, and we get half an hour away from this job site. We're doing about 65 down a 2-lane road. It's a highway. And this guy just comes ripping, passes us on the left so close that he sideswipes the mirror on my friend's truck. And my friend is trying to catch him to get the plates to call in a hit and run, call 911. And 5 miles down the road, there's like a downgrade and a left turn. And this guy was in a Econoline van just going faster and faster and faster. He gets to that corner. He hits the shoulder, overcorrects, goes into oncoming traffic, hits a smaller Chevy 4-door car, flips, hits a Peterbilt semi, and then lands upside down. And then we showed up at the accident right after all that happened. We didn't see that stuff happen because the guy was doing about 90 into that corner. So, went to the driver of the van, and an older guy, and I could tell he was in bad shape. He looked like his legs were broken. Looked like he might have had, maybe broken ribs. It was hard to tell. Some other not so great looking stuff. And I just had this sense that he wasn't in good shape. And my friend that got his truck sideswiped was like cussing at the guy because he hit his truck, and he was like, caused all this accident and said all this crazy stuff like, I hope you die, and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, knock it off, and I got down in this guy's face and I said, you might not make it through this. Do you know Jesus Christ? Do you know Jesus Christ? And I said, what's your name? What's your name? And the guy was in shock, so he just wasn't coherent, which is understandable. And so we got him dragged away from the van, got him out away from the leaking fuel and all this stuff, went over and helped the family in the car. It was 2 girls that just graduated high school, their dad, and their grandmother in the driver's seat. One of the girls broke her femur. The dad broke his arm. The grandmother was the only one we couldn't get out of the vehicle because it was hit on her side, so it smashed her side in. And we were on site on this accident for a good 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And EMS showed up, got everybody in a van, in an ambulance, got the medevac there, and life flighted out the van driver and the grandmother. So I got a call from the sheriff today because I wanted to follow up on this stuff, because I suspected, like, I'd heard rumors, and the van driver did pass. When I was looking at him face to face, I was as close to his face as I am to this camera. I just had this internal sense, like, this guy's not going to make it. or he's very close to not making it. And I just said, do you know Jesus Christ? And if you listen to enough near-death experience testimonies, even when people are in that incoherent state, that shock state, they can be out of their body hearing everything clearly. And, I've listened to audiobooks of John Burke, Imagine Heaven. I actually want to sign up for PureFlix and watch, who's the guy that wrote Case for Christ? Was it Les Strobel? He wrote a book called The Case for Heaven and just released a movie on PureFlix. So I recommend you watch that. I'm going to watch it. So when people are in that shock state, sometimes they're out of their body. More often than not, they hear and understand everything that's said when they're out of their body. So, that guy died on the way to the hospital. And I found out today that the grandmother that was in the driver's seat of the smaller car, she passed before they even left the scene. So the point of all this is that you can so quickly pass from this life. And it's so difficult to live in this generation and have your head on straight, because this generation is full of distractions, absolutely full of deception, and there's so many things to be busy with. There's so many things to be deceived with. And I can tell you that from my experience of becoming a born-again Christian back around 2007-ish, I don't have an exact date like some people do. Right out the gate, I read the Bible like a crazy person. I was 28 years old at the time. I'd never read the Bible, and I read it all the way through. I was reading NIV, so it was easier for me to understand. And I would read things, and I'd be like, man, I've heard that before. I didn't know that was in here. And I just read, and I read, and read. I read daily. I studied Bible prophecy teachings, Rapture Ready, a guy named Damon Duck, and some other people on there taught me all the details about how prophecy, end-time prophecy works. And a lot of it is kind of from like a Hal Lindsey kind of perspective, kind of a pretty mainstream understanding of how end-time prophecy has been taught for a long time. And I studied that stuff back in 2007, 2008, heavily, right? Daily, I studied it. And I had a daily habit of studying it. And then the internet began to grow. YouTube came out in 2005. I put my first video on YouTube in probably 2008, I think. And then cell phones became a bigger thing. It went from flip phones to, phones with keyboards, and then it went to touch screens, and then it just grew and it grew and it grew. We were all there, right? And the problem that we have now is that the phone, the internet, the TV, you name it, the thousands of choices that you can put in front of your face, they all take your attention, and it's so much harder to have a daily Bible habit. So I learned Bible prophecy. I learned the Bible in general before all this internet, watch a video, like listen to an audiobook or, whatever. So I put the work in and understood the end time prophecy. And I feel like the generation that we live in now is so ignorant of the times that we live in. It's not a thing that you can get caught up in a week. You have to have a habitual study to understand, because end time prophecy is so intricate, so detailed, that there's 1,000 different aspects to it that you can't just explain one and expect people to have an understanding of the end times. It's really 1,000 different things that fit together, and you have to understand 1,000 different things to get the big picture. So I feel like this generation, especially the millennials, have it harder than ever because there's too many things to take your attention away from just grinding out, reading and studying the Bible daily. And even myself, as someone who claims to be a born-again Christian, like willing to die for Jesus, willing to take this thing all the way to the very end, I even struggle having daily readings. But look at how I started this video, how quickly you can lose this whole situation. You can just be driving down the road like this grandmother, her son, and her 2 grandchildren. They were coming home from the beach. They just had a graduation ceremony for their 2 daughters that just graduated high school. And driving along, minding their biz, and a guy comes ripping through in a van at 90 miles an hour, and that's the end of the road for her. So, how are these 2 things related? End time prophecy is about to get very dark. I do believe in the rapture, but I also believe that we're going to start seeing the crazier things. Even recently, this area, Pacific Northwest, isn't known for having like triple-digit weather. And this town that I live in with the wildfire smoke and everything, we showed up in a Watchman video because we had 100-degree weather for like a week straight, which is uncommon here. So the end time stuff is going to get darker. I believe violence is going to increase. You see where just going to the grocery store, just going to the mall, just going to wherever, you can get shot just eating your lunch, road rage, just people not having sense because the love of many will wax cold, right? So we live in the generation that it's going to get increasingly dark. But then I see things like, have you heard of Catherine Crick, or have you heard of Torben from Last Reformation? Have you heard of Tom Loud, or even the more well-known people, Todd White? The gospel is being more understood and more implemented in the way that Acts 2 was done. So I feel like I've covered a lot of things, but basically my bottom line point is you can check out any minute just minding your business, going to the grocery store, driving down the highway. Do you know Jesus Christ? Do you? Is he just some mental, hey, I heard that in church when I was a kid, I understand that? Or has it gone from here to here? Do you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead? Do you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord? If you're confronted in public and somebody says, like, okay, MrBeast? MrBeast is like a huge YouTuber, and he just hit 100 million subscribers. He did an interview with Jake Paul, and Jake Paul was asking him if he was religious, right? And there's a part in the interview where, Jimmy, MrBeast, was raised in the Bible Belt, North Carolina, and raised in a Christian household. And Jake Paul at one point says, how about that Jesus Christ though? And Jimmy tap danced around it like, well, I'm not really, super into that. And he really ducked it. He did not confess Jesus Christ before men. And the Bible says that if you're ashamed of me before men, my Father will be ashamed of you. Right? So, are you Christian enough that you don't just believe it here, but if you're confronted and somebody says, are you a Christian? Do you believe in Jesus Christ? To the point where, do you remember Columbine? They asked the one girl, do you believe in Jesus Christ? And she said yes, and they shot her. So, are you willing to profess his name before men and women? it's getting dark out here. I don't want to ride with, the deer and the whatever, but I do want you to know that I'm okay with what I experienced yesterday. I've been in combat zone in Iraq, and I'm all right, okay? But those families aren't all right. They lost loved ones. Even the van driver, who was not the most well-liked person on the scene, I still showed him grace when he was in his worst moment. And if you need grace in your life, you got to give it. If you need forgiveness in your life, you got to give it. If you need whatever in your life, you got to give it. So I'll confess before all of you, Jesus Christ is Lord. He died on the cross for our sins because we were all born with the sin sickness that, the wages of sin is death. And if you don't deal with it, you're going to die. And then the second death is hell. I was thinking this before I got out here. The people in hell, they say, don't come here. They say, tell everybody don't come here. So don't go there. Like, everybody should hear at least once and have the option to accept or reject that Jesus Christ loves you, that we're all born on a path to hell and Jesus made a way out. It's not that Jesus wants to send us to hell. It's Jesus came to die to save us from hell, because the sin that we inherited from Adam condemns us, because the wages of sin is death. So, bottom line, we're in the end times. You can lose your life at any moment. Pray for divine protection, which is what I had yesterday, because our vehicle did get hit at 70 miles an hour. And cling to Jesus and the Bible, because if it's not in the Bible, it's lies from the enemy, and that's constant right now. That's what I got. God bless you.